A series of protests were held today against the rising cost of living and the current economic crisis that Sri Lanka is facing. What were the demands that were made at these protests? We've got the details lined up for you on Primetime News on TV1 tonight. But first, a look at your top stories.
News First headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
At the President's office on the present crises.
ජනාධිපතිවරණය පවත්වන්න එදාට රටේ ජනතාව වැඩපෙන්නයි කියලා මම මේ අවස්ථාවේ කියවෙන්නේ.
Askiri Anunayaka displeased over present state of affairs. IMF representatives meet President. Cabinet approval to obtain technical assistance. Finance Minister travels to India with the hope of obtaining loans to purchase fuel and medicine. Advisory Committee for the Economic Council.
News First headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
In a top story tonight, opposition leader Sajid Premadasa says a presidential election must be called to allow the people to make a decision. He made these remarks while leading a protest opposite the president's office in Colombo.
The Samika Janabalawegya organized a protest march to oppose the rising cost of living and to demand the government to offer a solution. One protest march began near the PD Sirisena grounds in Maligawatha, while another began from the opposition leader's office. The protest was launched under the theme Save Sri Lanka from Destruction.
Our objective is to show the burden faced by the people to the president, who is turning a blind eye to that. Go back to your motherland. Don't burden the innocent people even further.
The protest march that commenced from two locations made its way towards the president's office in Colombo.
The selling rate of the dollar stands at 280 rupees. It will go up to 300 rupees in the coming days. People don't have means of surviving. We expect the country's leaders to take the relevant steps to address this. If they don't listen to the people's mandate, we will have to take democratic steps in and outside parliament to end this corrupt family rule.
A demonstration was held opposite temple trees as well. The protesters attempted to enter the president's office to discuss their problems, but the police prevented them from entering the premises.
There is no diesel, there is no food, there is no milk powder, there is no electricity, there is nothing. People are in queues throughout the day. We wish to warn the President and his team that their term is short-lived. We will give you a month. The people feel they can't even last during that period. But as a responsible opposition, we will give you a month. We came here to show that we can chase you away forcibly. People are in queues, unable to afford 3 meals daily. We are pleading Gotabaya Rajapaksa to go home. Go back to the United States.
Yanda, Gota go home! Gota go home! Gota go home! America
Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa, who leads the Samagi Jana Balawegya, then spoke to the protesters.
The government, including President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa should allow us to run the country if they can't do their job properly. Sometimes they might ask us how I can say that. I wish to tell the people who are in queues for fuel that 3 Middle Eastern countries have promised the Samagi Jana Balawegya government that they are willing to supply fuel to us and that the payments can be made in 2 years. Go home or allow the people to decide. Is 2/3 in Parliament the approval? What other approvals are required? We need a presidential election again. On that day, the people in the country will show their strength.
මේ රටේ වෙන විකල්පයක් නැහැ. මෙතනයි විකල්පය තියෙන්නේ. සමගි ජන බලවේගයයි විකල්පය. මේක තමයි පොදු ජනයාගේ. මේක තමයි පොඩි මිනිහගේ. මේක තමයි දුප්පතාගේ, මධ්‍යම පන්තියේ, උගතාගේ, වෘත්තිකයාගේ, ව්‍යාපාරිකයාගේ. මේ සියලු දෙනාගේම තන මෙතනයි. එක්සිත්ව, එක්සත්ව, ජන සම්පන්නව
Rather than focusing on our victory, let's make the 22 million people in this country victorious.
Police scene of crime officers were seen examining the area opposite the President's office after the demonstration.
News First with the people.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
Register today for a Zoom workshop on new technology in Sinhala.
Win the world with innovations. On the 24th of March at 3 p.m.
Register via 0777 6000020.
Organized by Slit Institute.
Tech Bus.
Main sponsor.
Slit Knowledge University, challenging convention and redefining education. News First with the people.
The Anunayaka of the Askeri chapter of the Siam sect, Most Venerable Venderue Upali Anunayaka Thera, says that he is disappointed over the fate of the country.
Venerable Venderue Upali Anunayaka Thera commented on the country's present situation when he was visited by Sri Lanka Pudujana Peramuna parliamentarian Jagat Kumara. Parliamentarian Jagat Kumara visited the Mahanayaka of the Malwathu chapter of the Siam sect, Most Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Sumangala Thera, and also the Anunayaka Thera.
The Mahasangha had this to say at a media briefing.
මුළු සමස්ත සමාජයේම ශ්‍රී
Sri Lanka is travelling rapidly towards destruction. This is not a natural destruction. This is a massive disaster created by man. Who are these people who created it? Sri Lankans are struggling immensely on a daily basis. There are many queues. We can hear complaints from all parts of the country. The people are cursing the government on the streets. They are openly cursing the ruler, saying that they have had enough of this. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is to address the nation tomorrow. What can a president who is enjoying full executive powers tell the nation and the people? The people have a common message to the president. That is, please resign.
ජනාධිපතිතුමාට කියන පණිවිඩයක් තියෙනවා කරුණා කළා බැහැල යන්න. ප්‍රශ්නයක් මතුවෙන හැම වතාවෙම
He feels that addressing the people based on what his allies say whenever a problem arises will solve that problem. Therefore, we wish to tell the president, who is to address the nation tomorrow, that it is not the solution to this crisis. The country's economy was dragged towards destruction in the last few months. Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa should be removed from his position. He must resign. We have our doubts on the solutions that would be developed by the Economic Council that comprises of politicians. We haven't elected a government to provide excuses for the issues faced by people. This is not a time to switch parties, to form national governments, or to divide the wealth of the public among themselves. Please stop unnecessary development activities. The government's main responsibility is to address the hunger of the people.
මහ ජනතාවගේ කුසගින්න නිවීමයි.
Have authorities resolved the fuel crisis? The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation says that there are enough fuel stocks in the country. We have formulated a plan to ensure that fuel tankers reach the country continuously in the next 2-3 weeks this month. Therefore, we can assure you that there won't be a fuel shortage in the country. Despite assurances that enough fuel is available in the country, people continue to stand in queues at filling stations to purchase diesel and octane 92 petrol. Many people had queued up to purchase diesel in Town Hall this morning. A bowser carrying only petrol had then reached the location.
පාන්දර 4:00ට දරුවෝ අරගෙන පාක්කොල වාහන වතරගෙන මෙතන මේ දුක් විඳිනවා. අනේ මහත්තයෝ කරුණාකරලා මේ දරුවෝ වෙනුවෙන් හරි මේ කරුණාකරලා අපිට මේ සාහනය ලබා දෙන්න.
Long queues were seen at filling stations in Kohuala and Nugegoda.
මම දැන් සෙට් 10ක බැලුවොත් 10
I visited 10 filling stations. There was no petrol. I asked them to come and see the situation here. This is a nuisance to us. We are suffering under a government which we elected. They travel in vehicles with tinted glasses. They can't see what's going on. They are blind to the problems.
A long queue of people was seen standing in Bambalapitia to purchase fuel.
It would be much better to send our children to parliament. We have to accept that things like this will happen when we entrust the economy with uneducated people. When our children speak, we feel it would be better to send them to parliament. Those in parliament must go to school again.
Diesel was only available at one fuel station at the Anuradhapura town.
We will have to get used to waking up at 4 a.m. and joining these queues if the country goes ahead like this. They received fuel stocks at 1 a.m. but sold it only at 6 a.m. The people in queues slept until then. We have to go to work one day and stay in queues the other day.
Many people at filling stations in Kandy were unable to purchase fuel. A long queue was seen at a fuel station along Peradeniya Road in Kandy.
We don't receive proper salaries for our jobs. We must ask them to go home. It would be better to give this responsibility to Vannilatto.
Farmers of Kaduruvela in Polunnaru were queued up to purchase fuel for their machinery last night.
We have been in queues for about 5 days. How can we live like this? Ask Gotabaya and others to resign if they can't do their job. The Minister of Energy says there are no queues for fuel. Ask them whether these aren't queues.
A tense situation arose when a fuel station in the Chillau town said that it had run out of fuel. Our correspondent reported that the filling station had, however, sold fuel afterwards. The Energy Ministry told Newsfirst that people are unnecessarily stockpiling fuel. However, the managers of filling stations had this to say. Energy Ministry Secretary KDR Olga said the relevant institutions have been directed to investigate whether the decision to close some fuel stations is an act of sabotage. She said that there is adequate stocks of petrol and diesel in the country. Gas cylinder shortage aggravates. Laughs Gas says its supply of gas cylinders to the market is limited. The company said that it cannot import gas consignments as there are insufficient dollars to open letters of credit. A spokesperson for the company said that they are unable to unload a gas consignment that is docked at the Hambantota port. Many gas dealerships remained closed due to the shortage of gas cylinders. A long queue was seen in Kadawatha to purchase gas cylinders. We know why they can't distribute gas cylinders and fuel. That's because the money looted by politicians isn't in the country. A man in the queue had arrived to purchase a gas cylinder to cook meals for a funeral. I have come here with the death certificate as we don't have a way to cook meals without gas cylinders. We can't cook meals for a funeral because there is no gas cylinder. This was how the people responded to the shortage of gas cylinders in Nagoda Kalutara.
A journalist raised questions at today's cabinet media briefing while standing in a queue for gas cylinders.
I came to a place where there are people to speak about their problems. These people have been in queues since 2:30 this morning. We say there are gas tankers at sea. These people don't have meals. This is the situation at the moment. When the country is being ruled, there is a future plan for 5 years in case of a war or if there is no fuel. Doesn't the government have a future plan? Is this government formulating a future plan only now after people have been affected?
Any government doesn't like to see its people standing in queue. What was the main reason that caused our dollar reserves to decline rapidly in 2020 and eventually made the repayment of debt difficult for us? It was the COVID-19 pandemic. Our government, led by the president, decided to ban the importation of vehicles because we foresaw this crisis. As we were trying to rebuild our economy along with a boom in tourist arrivals and more export earnings, a war broke out between Ukraine and Russia. The government is obtaining the advice of expert institutions to manage this situation. It is discussing on restructuring debt and obtaining loans from other lenders. But due to the current situation globally, it is not happening at the rate which we expected. The finance minister and the president are taking measures regarding financial matters by obtaining the advice of those in the finance sector. They don't make decisions single-handedly. We will take the relevant steps to act with an open mind to overcome this crisis.
The Sri Lanka cabinet has granted approval to appoint a 14-member advisory committee to assist the National Economic Council appointed by the president. The advisory committee will comprise of the following experts and business leaders: Professor H.D. Karunaratna, Professor Shirantha Heenkenda, Dr. Dushni Veerakon, Dhammika Pereira, Krishan Balendra, Ashraf Omar, Dr. Hans Vijay Surya, Vish Govindasamy, S. Ranganathan, Ranjit Page, Suresh Dimel, Prabhash Subasingha, Duminda Hulangamua, Sujiva Mudalige, Ashok Patirage, Mohan Panditage. The International Monetary Fund's Director for Asia and Pacific Department, Chong Yong Ree, called on President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today. The meeting took place at the President's office with representatives from both sides present. The matters that were discussed during the meeting at the President's office were not disclosed. The IMF team had met with the Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa yesterday. During yesterday's cabinet meeting, we made a policy decision for the Finance Minister to begin talks and obtain technical support and hold discussions with the International Monetary Fund to obtain the relevant advice and support. We will begin talks officially next month. We will take steps to obtain advice from them.
නිල සාකච්ඡා ලබන මාසෙදී ආරම්භ කිරීමට නියමිතයි. ඔවුන්ගේ උපදෙස් ලබා ගැනීමට අපි කටයුතු කරනවා.
Can anyone of the ministers clarify if the cabinet approved going for an IMF bailout, not just getting technical advice?
The approval has been given to the Honorable Finance Minister to go ahead and to discuss with the IMF. Their representatives are already in Sri Lanka, and we are getting their technical assistance. So for that, to initiate discussions and to get their assistance, we have okayed that decision, but we have to take it from there, what sort of condition they put forward, and we will look at from the country side as well. So from there, we will take it forward, whether it's restricted to technical advice and other sort of assistance.
Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa and Finance Secretary S.R. Atigala left for India to follow up on a $1 billion loan that would be used to import food and medicine. They will participate in high-level talks during the next 2 days. India has offered Sri Lanka a $500 million credit line to purchase fuel, a $400 million swap, and a deferral for a $500 million debt due to the Asian Clearing Union. Sri Lanka had signed certain crucial agreements ahead of attempts to obtain the $1 billion loan from India to purchase medicine and food. These agreements have seen valuable lands in Sampur, Punarin and Mena falling into the hands of Indian entities for renewable energy projects. Most tanks at the Trincomalee oil tank farm are also now being managed under a joint venture with India. A valuable terminal of the Colombo port is now run by India's Adani Group, which has shown interest over the Palali airport and the Trincomalee harbour. Doesn't this indicate that India is offering loans to Sri Lanka's essential needs in return for gaining ownership of valuable assets? As agreements were being signed with India, a decision was also made over the weekend to expedite a free trade agreement with China. The decision was made by the Cabinet Subcommittee tasked with negotiating with China, Japan and the Middle East region on economic matters. Will Sri Lanka benefit from a free trade agreement with China? Experts say a free trade agreement will have a massive impact on the local market as Sri Lanka imports a large amount of products from China. China has already been given the room to manage the Chinese-funded Port City project through a special law that was approved in Parliament. China also holds a considerable stake in the Hambantota port. As a result, experts are now raising questions on whether the free trade agreement will be signed with China as a result of an arbitrary decision. Amidst the economic crisis induced by poor management, will China and India create a situation in which Sri Lanka will have to obtain loans to purchase fuel, food and medicine, and eventually cause the country to lose its valuable resources?
The renovation of the Rajavasala at the temple of the tooth relic that is to be carried out under US funding began today. The renovation got underway under the auspices of US Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Julie J. Chung, and Director General of Archaeology, Professor Anura Manatunga.
This is really a special moment. I arrived in Colombo just a month ago to assume the role of the U.S. Ambassador. And it is no accident that my very first trip in the country is, of course, to Kandy, this magical place. And also, I've actually been here before, but not as an ambassador. I first visited Sri Lanka as a tourist almost 10 years ago. And Kandy was one of my very favorite stops.
The project is estimated to cost $265,000.
Sri Lanka's High Commissioner to India, Milinda Morogoda, sought ways and means to further enhancing cooperation with India in the power and renewable energy sector when he met with the Minister of Power and Renewable Energy of India, Shri Raj Kumar Singh, in New Delhi.
The Minister of Power and New and Renewable Energy of India and the High Commissioner of Sri Lanka discussed a range of issues pertaining to bilateral cooperation in the power and renewable energy sector. The discussion focused on the ways and means to deepen and broaden the long-term strategic cooperation in the sector, as well as short and medium-term projects to enhance interactions between the two nations. In this context, the progress of the projects under the line of credit of $100 million extended by India in June 2021 was reviewed. This line of credit, extended through the Exim Bank of India, financed various projects in the solar energy sector in Sri Lanka, including those announced during the founding conference of the International Solar Alliance held in March 2018, such as rooftop solar photovoltaic systems for households and government buildings.
Gammadda, by the people, for the people.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is to address the nation tomorrow. Journalists raised questions regarding this at the cabinet media briefing held today.
හෙට ජනාධිපතිතුමා ජාතිය අමතනවා. එතකොට කොහොමද මේ විදුලිය කප්පාදුව ඒ කාලය මගහැරලාද සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ? ජනාධිපතිතුමා ජාතිය ඇමතීම පිළිබඳ.
Let the president decide the time and the content of his speech. The speech will be delivered at a time that is convenient for everyone.
අමාත්‍යවරුනි කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයේ නිර්වාහන ලද අමාත්‍යවරුන් වන උදේගම්මන්පිල මහතා සහ විමල් විදුවංශ මහතා පසුගියදා මාධ්‍යයට කියා සිටියා ජලාස් සලහ පෙරමුණ ඔබතුමත් ඒ වගේම වන්දන ගුණවර්ධන මහතාත් මුදල් අමාත්‍යවරයාගේ උදහසට ලක් වෙලා තියෙනවා කියලා. ඇත්තටම අමාත්‍යතුමනි ඔබතුමා ඒ වගේ මුදල් අමාත්‍යවරයාගේ උදහසට ලක් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ.
තීරණය කරන්නට ඕනේ. ඔවුන් සතුරන් ලෙස You have to decide that. I am not ready to accept them as the enemy. I am not in a tribal mindset in which I seek to destroy them as the enemy. They are two of my friends who worked harder than us to keep the team united and establish a government. Therefore, I will always consider them as friends.
බලයටපත් කරන්න විශාල කැපකිරීමක් කරපු. ඒ කියන්නේ අපිට වඩා කැපකිරීම කරපු මිත්‍රයන් දෙන්නේ. ඒ නිසා මේ ඔවුන් මිත්‍රත්වයේ දැස් වලින් තමයි අපි සිළු දෙනාම ඔවුන් දිහා බලන්නේ.
Sri Lanka Press Council Chairman Mahinda Patirana and parliamentarian Sanjeev Edirimana attended a media briefing of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna.
මේ පක්ෂය අපි නිර්මාණය කරමුන් හිටියේ කාලේ එක්තරා තැනකදී
While we were in the process of forming this party, I received a call from Vimal Veeravansha. He asked why we were forming a party because there was no need for one. He didn't contribute towards forming the Podujana Peramuna. Vimal Veeravansha is raising accusations of money laundering, but Basil Rajapaksa is not facing any charges in court over that. If it is under investigation, then the FBI doesn't give information to a third party. The federal police doesn't do that. Vimal Veeravansha is trying to tarnish Basil Rajapaksa's image and attacking the government.
මේ ආණ්ඩුවට පහර ගැසීමේ ක්‍රියාවලිය තමයි කරගන්නේ.
The multitude of issues faced by the people have turned into frustration, forcing people onto the streets demanding answers from the government.
A group of people who are not affiliated to any political party held a protest at the Kohuwala junction opposing several issues faced by the people. The protest was held for the 15th day today. The protesters demanded solutions from the government for the shortage of essential items, the soaring cost of living and the depreciation of the rupee. The protesters lit candles and held placards during the demonstration.
And we are only starting to feel the repercussions of this, of decades of mismanagement. No, this is not a, yes, some people are saying it's a global economic crisis. This is not a global economic crisis anymore. Many of the countries in our region have rebounded quite well. But Sri Lanka is now starting to go in a negative direction.
We need proper governance. We need people who are responsible and who love this country to drive it towards where we want to go.
Responsibility of all those in the middle classes to come out and show solidarity with those who are much less fortunate than us. People who can't make a living, like this vendor who's just going past here selling beetle. He told me he has no money to take anything home for tonight.
But I don't want to see whoever comes into power who's going to destroy this country within 2-3 years, that my children won't be able to live in this country. This is not just about my children. This is about all the citizens in this country, all the Sri Lankans. These rulers who comes to rule this country are destroying our country. I'm angry about it. I'm sad about it. So this is the least I can do.
Still in local news, the central bank has printed 22 billion rupees yesterday.
The central bank had absorbed 18.7 billion rupees from the market last Friday. However, it had printed 22 billion rupees yesterday. Accordingly, the net money printed in the week ending on Monday was 14.7 billion rupees. Central bank data indicate that 127.23 billion rupees has been printed so far this year.
News First with the people.
As Ukraine heads into the 20th day of the Russian invasion on its territory, powerful explosions rocked the Ukrainian capital Kyiv as Russia struck a residential building and a metro station. 2 people have been killed in an attack on an apartment block in the city.
Negotiations between Russian and Ukrainian representatives are set to resume. More than 4,000 people left the besieged city of Mariupol yesterday, with more evacuation efforts planned today. Drone footage taken of the Ukrainian city of Mariupol shows the extent of the damage caused by Russian attacks. Evacuation corridors from 4 cities in the northeastern Sumy region of Ukraine will be in place today. Almost all of the Russian military advances remain stalled despite heavy bombing, according to a senior U.S. defense official. A journalist has reportedly been arrested after interrupting Russian state TV with a sign reading "No War." After several seconds, the channel switched to a different report to move the protester from the screen. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky thanked the woman in his nightly video address. The prime ministers of Poland and Czech Republic and Slovenia will all travel to Kiev later to meet President Volodymyr Zelensky. The visit was confirmed by the Polish government, who said the purpose of the trip was to confirm the unequivocal support of the entire European Union for the sovereignty and independence of Ukraine. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for China's foreign ministry has told a regular news conference in the Chinese capital that the G20 grouping of nations is not an appropriate forum to discuss the Ukraine issue. China's foreign minister has warned his nation does not want to be impacted by Western economic sanctions on Russia. China also denied reports that Beijing has expressed willingness to provide military assistance to Russia in its invasion of Ukraine, and once again accused the US of spreading disinformation. Despite Russia's invasion of Ukraine and worsening international relations, joint operation of the International Space Station continues normally. Plans remain in place to bring NASA astronaut Mark Hay back to Earth as planned aboard a Russian Soyuz spacecraft at the end of the month.
News First with the people.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News on TV1. Joining us via Zoom, our sign language interpreter for tonight was Taraka Gabriel. And I'm Charlotte Benedict for the News First team, where the people come first. Take care. God bless.